Well, so good morning to all of you. So last day we started resonators and we discussed some of the basic properties of a resonator, and for that we introduced different type of quality factors, and we discussed what they mean and how to determine them for a given resonator system. We also discussed about transmission line resonator, and from here we found how to find out the voltage and current distribution, and from that how we can find the resonant condition. So by considering the input impedance, basically. So in if it is open circuited, then y in it should be 0. So putting that, we can find out relationship for resonance, and specifically we considered a step impedance resonator, and we discussed about the relationship. So after transmission line resonator, then we discussed about the rectangular cavity resonator, waveguide based, and here this is little different than the transmission line because we can't use voltage or current concept, and that's why we have to deal with the electric field and magnetic field. And finally, we found the expression for the resonant frequency, and we also discussed on how to improve quality factor for any given resonator. So now today's the last part. It is dielectric resonator. So what is this? This is made of completely dielectric material. So conductivity that is equal to 0, basically. And now there are different types of dielectrics available, and dielectric constant, it varies widely, and typically for this type of for this dielectric resonator applications, epsilon r chosen value is in the range 10 to 100. Now you see what is the advantage. In PCB technology, we use the thumb rule to calculate lambda g, guided wavelength lambda g, that is equal to lambda naught by square root of epsilon r. Now, if epsilon r is high, that means lambda g is small. So the length of a resonator, it becomes small. So that's why at lower frequencies, particularly for these in mobile phone industry and in consumer markets, this technology is very popular, and they are used to design antennas, filters, tank circuit for the oscillators, and so on. So particularly filters, if we want to design high performance filter, let's say band pass filter, high performance means passband loss should be as small as possible, rejection should be as high as possible. Then we have to increase number of resonators. So instead of just 2 or 3, we may have to use 5, 10 resonators. So it will essentially increase the volume of implementation, right? For the filter, it will occupy large area now. And if I can actually replace them by dielectric resonator with high dielectric constant material, then it becomes very small. So even if you search in Google, there are ceramic filters available. So ceramic materials, basically dielectric materials. And at low frequency for mobile bands, 1.8 gigahertz or Wi-Fi band 2.4 gigahertz, their size can be as small as just 4 by 4 millimeter. So it is basically in millimeter. So we can't think of PCB technology to that level. In PCB technology, it would become at least a few centimeters, and we can't integrate them in handheld device. So as I said, that at low frequency, it is very popular. Now, in this class, it is just an introduction to dielectric resonator. Now, what are other advantages? Another thing, since we can avoid metal, so that means we can avoid conductor loss, and with increasing frequency, conductor loss increases. So we can avoid that. But at millimeter wave frequencies, usually we don't prefer these dielectric resonators. There are some reasons. The first reason is its fabrication tolerance. Now at millimeter wave, already site is small. Now if I have, let's say, go through a fabrication procedure with plus minus 25 micrometer, plus minus 25 micrometers of tolerance, maybe at 1 gigahertz, the shift in frequency will be just in megahertz. But if I do that at 60 gigahertz, it may become a few hundred of megahertz or sometimes more than 1 gigahertz. With that, we can't tolerate actually. So that's why, because of mostly this point, it's not very popular at millimeter wave frequencies. Further, it has some other problems. You know that dielectric constant, it varies with temperature as well as frequency. So if the temperature changes, then dielectric constant changes. If there is some mechanical vibration or stress which can change the volume of this dielectric resonator, so then your corresponding resonant frequency changes, quality factor changes, everything changes. And now conceptually, how a dielectric material can support a resonance, you have to go back to surface wave, what we learned there. So if you recall that we discussed a dielectric slab without any ground plane that can support TE type mode and TM type mode. And there we discussed that whenever we deal with dielectric boundary, we always have hybrid mode. What is hybrid mode? In the direction of propagation, we have a component of electric field and a component of magnetic field. That is called hybrid. Now, depending on a specific mode, we can approximate it by TE mode or TM mode. It depends on situation, not that always we can do this approximation. So then in general, when I'm going to analyze a dielectric resonator, we have to consider all the 6 component, 3 component, EX, EY, EZ, another 3, HX, HY, HZ. Well, so that we have to keep in mind, and that's why analysis become much more complicated for dielectric resonator. Well, now for the surface wave, we consider it's like a plane which goes to minus infinity to plus infinity in XY direction. Now we can make a channel which is infinite only in one direction, X direction, and side direction, then the width, it is defined. So you see, from this concept actually optical fiber came. And for optical fiber, the dimension compared to a wavelength, it is usually much more, and that's why we don't have any electric field components in air. Same thing holds for dielectric materials. Now, when it is comparable to wavelength, so in air, then we have some field component which will decrease exponentially. So you consider this isolated dielectric resonator. Shown, it's a cylindrical resonator. Cylindrical structure is the most preferred structure. Then inside we have the field distribution, and also in air we'll be having a part of electric and magnetic field distribution, which of course decays exponentially if you go outward direction. Well, so then in general, it can support hybrid modes. We represent by HEM, NML are the mode numbers, and sometimes we can approximate it by TE and TM mode. Now, when I'm talking TE, transverse electric or transverse magnetic, this is with respect to some direction, right? For rectangular waveguide, we consider the propagation direction. That is the reference. And with respect to that, we define transverse electric or transverse magnetic. So for a cylindrical resonator, we consider the axial direction, Z. Then we say TE or TM to Z. Okay, not with respect to X or Y. It is with respect to Z, transverse direction. Well, so other than this, we can also approximate by HE and EH mode. So how we name them, when EZ dominates over HZ, so significant component EZ, then we call it HE type mode. And when HZ dominates over EZ, we call it EH type mode. So what we see in conclusion, that you see one dielectric resonator can support many different types of modes. Okay, it is not a straightforward solution like a microstrip line resonator or a rectangular waveguide resonator. It can support many different types of modes, and if you change the shape, actually any one of them can become dominant mode. So we are not going into further details. So let us just concentrate for the most popular mode. Okay. Now, how we define the mode number N, M, and L. So N, it represents variation along its periphery, circumferential variation or phi variation. M is the variation along its radius, and L is the variation along its height, Z. Well, so phi variation, R variation, and Z variation in cylindrical coordinate system. So that means if we don't have any phi variation, so it will look symmetric with respect to axis, and we call them axis symmetric mode. And Tm, it will be represented by n equal to 0 then. So Tm 0 ml, Te 0 ml, those modes are axis symmetric mode. And here you see one interesting thing which we did not see for microstrip line or rectangular waveguide. A component of electric field, it can be also in air, and that is significant. For microstrip line, yes, there was some fringing field in air, but compared to that, here the electric field component which is in air, that can be significant. We can't neglect that. So in other words, what we can say, that this height D, not necessarily it has to be half wavelength. It can be much smaller, not just smaller, much smaller than lambda g by 2. Well, so if that is the case, then we have to use some other notation to represent this type of scenario. When we are assuming there can be a significant part of electromagnetic wave in air, which is of course attached to this dielectric, it is not coming out as radiation, it is attached to the dielectric. Well, so we represent it by delta. So for example, here the most used mode is TE01 delta mode. What that means? N equal to 0, we don't have any phi variation. Then along radius, we will be having one variation, and along its height Z, its length is smaller than lambda g by 2. So since it's smaller than lambda g by 2, we are representing it by delta. So this mode, then it is TE01 delta mode, and it is the most popular mode for a cylindrical dielectric resonator. So let us concentrate on it and let's see how the field configuration it looks without doing any mathematics. Well, so it is TE to Z, right? Transverse electric with respect to Z. So that means EZ component is 0. Not only that, it is azimuthically symmetric. So we don't have any phi variation, right? So del phi, that is equal to 0. And also we said that along its height, it is less than half cycle variation along Z. Well, another important condition, at R equal to A, we can put a magnetic wall for this case. So what is the condition for magnetic wall? So that means electric field it becomes tangential here. Magnetic field is perpendicular on the surface of the cylinder at r equal to a. Then what are the non-zero field components? We have E phi in phi direction, H r in radial direction, and Hz that is along height. So here I am showing the field variation. So the dielectric resonator is shown here with a radius of a and height is d. Then you see how the magnetic field component it forms loop. So when we cut the cylinder along its midplane, it looks like a rectangle, and on the rectangle magnetic field is drawn. Okay, so it forms loops, and a part it is in air, and where magnetic field is maximum, so Hz component, let's say if we consider, that is maximum on the central plane of the cylinder. So it represents the Hz component, and on the center it is central plane, we see that it is highest. Now we have only E phi, so top right it is inside the dielectric resonator. You can compare this situation with the TE01 mode in a circular waveguide, but for the circular waveguide it is a closed structure, so everything inside. Now it was, if you recall, it is axis symmetric mode. With respect to axis it looks symmetric, right? And now from center to go outward, then we cross just one maxima. Here we have the same thing. So from center, if we go outward, then we cross the maxima. It is drawn at z equal to 0 plane, and outside also we have a significant component. So if I plot magnitude of E versus radius, at center it is 0. Now if you go along r, it increases. We have a maxima, and then inside air, that means r more than a, it decays exponentially. Now how much component will be outside, that is up to us. So we have to select accordingly the radius or epsilon r of the material. Here are some photographs of popular dielectric resonators. So the first one, it is a solid cylinder. The second one, it's a cube, but from second one onward, you can see they drilled air via. So they drilled it. So it looks like a pipe. There is a reason for that. It is to avoid the next higher order mode, which I did not show here. So, but from here we can explain it. If you look at the electric field distribution carefully, along axis of the cylinder, we don't have any significant component of electric field. But for the next higher order mode, it is just the opposite. We have maximum electric field concentration along axis, center. So now, if I drill air via, that means dielectric constant epsilon r equal to 1. So that will not disturb as such the resonant frequency of this TE01 delta mode. Why? Because it does not have any field, as such any field concentration at the center. So if I perturb the central point axis, then as such we don't have any effect on this mode. But since the next higher order mode, it is having highest concentration along axis, so and we are decreasing epsilon r, so its resonance frequency will increase. So we can avoid, we can actually push the next higher order mode to higher frequency. That is a standard technique used for any cylindrical resonator. You can see here, so that's why they drilled actually for all these cylinders. Okay, so to push the next higher order mode to higher frequencies. Well, so we learned so many different types of resonator. Let us compare their performances. So when we go for applications, cost does matter. So it's a comparison among loss, size, and cost. So here what we are considering, PCB technology, microstrip or strip line or CPW line. It's represented by this yellow block. Then we have the dielectric resonator in green. SIW we did not cover. It is substrate integrated waveguide. Just in simple, I can explain what is SIW. So when we buy PCB substrate from market with both side copper, right? So the top plane and bottom plane copper we can use as if they are the broad walls of a waveguide. Now, if I cut a strip, not just a metal part, also the dielectric part, and if I put electroplating on the side walls, so how it will look? It will look like a thin rectangular waveguide filled with dielectric material, right? So top side, bottom side, we already have copper. We are cutting the substrate like a strip, and on the side walls, we are depositing copper. So it looks like then a thin waveguide, rectangular waveguide, filled with dielectric material. So that is called substrate integrated waveguide, or in short, SIW. So SIW, why it is popular? It came actually in last 15 years and becoming popular. Why? Because of its cross section. If you compare the cross section of SIW with microstrip line, its cross section is bigger, so it can have lower loss. So you compare with microstrip line resonator, the quality factor for microstrip it's 50 to 200 typically. For SIW it can be 150 to 1000, but we are using the same PCB technology for fabrication. This is the advantage, and that's why SIW is becoming popular divider. Next, dielectric resonator. So its Q is much higher. Here we could avoid metal loss, and some materials are available with very low loss tangent value. So if we use them, then the unloaded quality factor, it can be as high as 3000, almost comparable to rectangular waveguide technology, but size is small. So that's why I said that for this Wi-Fi application, your 4G and upcoming 5G. 5G already started from 2019 in European countries, North America, Southeast Asia. In India, we don't know when it will start. Anyway, so they started experimentally some small areas, and most probably in next year they are going for large scale deployment. Well, so for all these bands, then these ceramic filters, as I said, dielectric resonators is becoming very important part, particularly for 5G. We are widely using it inside base stations, your handheld device, that means phone. Well, next is the waveguide. So as we see that its unloaded quality factor, it can be as high as 12,000. So there is a technique actually, it's a combination of waveguide with dielectric resonator. We put a dielectric resonator inside a rectangular waveguide cavity, and that is means very popular in space application, also in defense application. And in a combined manner, even they can achieve unloaded quality factor of 50,000, 50,000, quite high. Well, and superconductor. Superconductor not very popular, but for space application, sometimes noise figure it's an important quantity. We'll discuss it later. first we have to learn about some terms like noise figure, noise temperature. So there people using superconductor. We call it high temperature superconductor, but this high is not means that high. So it does not have to go to liquid helium. Liquid nitrogen also can work. Well, so if we compare, of course, superconductor, it provides best performance, but its cost is also very high. So for regular uses, even for radar application, usually superconductor is not that popular. Well, so this is some comparison. Then what we see that for conventional structure, waveguide provide least loss, but size is maximum. And microstrip line loss is high, but its cost is minimum. And that's why PCB technology is so popular. Next, how do we excite a resonator? That is also important. So for a microstrip line, simply we use a gap as shown here. Now you can change the gap and control Q external. So when we design this coupling system, we have to just keep one point in mind, that the feed line should have some field component in the the resonator. It has its own characteristics, field distribution. So this feed line should have some field components in the same direction. Otherwise, if they become perpendicular to each other, we call them orthogonal mode, then it won't be excited. So feed line, it's a microstrip line. From its fringing filter, it can easily excite a microstrip line section. So in this figure, I'm showing a single port resonator, and here this resonator is connected to 2 ports. So in some application, we may need higher coupling, but gap, you can't just keep on decreasing it, because we have we have some limitations due to fabrication. Here, for example, whatever we have, we can fabricate till 100 micrometer, 0.1 millimeter. So after that, we can't reduce the gap. Then how to increase coupling? So instead of this end-to-end coupling, we use side-to-side coupling. So this resonator, U-shaped resonator, it's popularly known as hairpin resonator. And see the microstrip line, how it is bent. So one side it corresponds to lambda g by 4, and this whole length we are using for coupling. So obviously this arrangement will provide higher coupling. That means what about Q external? Coupling increasing. So resonator will lose more power into feed line. So loss increasing for resonator. So Q external, it decreases. So for this top figure, Q external is higher compared to this second figure. We can also directly connect input to this input feed line to this resonator. We call it tap feeding. Now here, how it looks like all the power is transferred from feed resonator. No, that is not the case. So Q external we can tune by tuning this tapping point. And what is the logic? Without doing any mathematics, if I consider this tapping point, okay, let me show it. Yeah, this tapping point. Now, if I change the tapping point up or bottom, accordingly, Zin will change, input impedance. If Zin changes, your reflection will change, right? because it is Z in minus Z naught by Z in plus Z naught. So reflection coefficient is changing. That means you can control Q external. When the reflection is less, so it is absorbing more power, then your Q external is low. When the reflection it is very high, close to 1, Q external is high. So you see, then Q external, it is related to reflection coefficient or S11, right? Well, these parameters, these undercoupled, critically coupled, usually they are not very popular, but they can be defined in terms of the quality factors. Let's say G, we define a parameter which is equal to Q unloaded divided by Q external, QU or QUL divided by Q external. So then if G is less than 1, it is undercoupled to feed line. If G is equal to 1, it is critically coupled to feed line. And if G is more than 1, then it is said that resonator is overcoupled to feed line. Now, in most of the application, you will see that QU higher, much higher than Q external. So for most of the application, G is more than 1. Here are some more examples. Okay, my PowerPoint is not working. Yeah, I can even now see my slide. Hold on just 1 minute. Yes, now I think you can see. Well, some other examples, how we excite waveguide. In the first example, here we have a cylindrical cavity. You can see a cylindrical cavity made of metal, and inside it is air. So this type of cavity we use as frequency meter, and it is connected to rectangular waveguide to a common aperture. You can see here it's shown here like this. So in the common metal plane we have a hole, that is the aperture. So power is coupled to this cylindrical cavity to this aperture. Now here, how we can control Q external? There are two ways. One straightforward way, you increase the radius of this aperture. If you increase the radius, then we have more coupling. Q external will decrease. Second way, if we shift it, we put some offset to this aperture. So along its width, if it goes to sidewall, then also coupling increases. Okay, it depends on actually electric field slope. On central plane of the waveguide, electric field is maximum. Slope is 0. Now, if you go to sidewall, the slope increases. You consider variation of electric field in side direction. So that's why if I change the aperture position, then also coupling changes. Second example, here what we are doing, exciting the waveguide to a coaxial cable. So this coaxial cable, if you look carefully, we can see the outer diameter metal here, and it goes through one aperture on the top wall. So aperture is not very clear. We must have a hole. Otherwise, where the electromagnetic wave it lies here inside coaxial cable. It's inside the dielectric. So I have to keep some opening to this dielectric to couple power from dielectric to waveguide or air. Well, so that's why there should be a hole, and through this hole the inner conductor is inserted, and the other end of this inner conductor, it is soldered to the broad side, other side. Well, so from the waveguide, if you look into coaxial cable, you can see the dielectric. Again, here also the same thing. If we change its position, Q external will change. If we change the radius of the aperture, Q external will change. Third example, it's for a dielectric resonator. You can see this cylinder. Now it is excited from a microstrip line. And how we control Q external? We simply change this offset. So a part of this dielectric resonator, you can see it sitting on microstrip line. If you change this overlapping part, its length, then coupling will change. Well, so that's all from the resonator part. Now let us take a few questions. You can switch on your microphone and ask me question if you have any doubt. Yes, any question?
Sir, could you explain the concept of G again?
We did not derive the expression. We are just using the expression actually. So what is G? It is represented by the ratio of two quality factors. Q unloaded to Q external. Unloaded quality factor, that is the characteristics of the resonator. And Q external, how it is coupled to your feed line, right? So it represents the ratio. So then it is related to different coupling situation. When G is less than 1, it is undercoupled to feed line. G equal to 1, critically coupled to feed line. And G more than 1, it is overcoupled to feed line. And in most of the application, we take QU much more than Q external. So we use this third condition for most of the cases, G more than 1. Any other question? You can switch on your microphone. Well, it seems that all of you understood everything. Now we are going to start a new chapter, network analysis. Yes, some SIW, why aperture position in waveguide does not matter. Now, when I said this, for SIW also the same thing. It is substrate integrated waveguide. You can consider like a thin waveguide. Inside we have dielectric material. So whatever we learned for rectangular waveguide, that holds for substrate integrated waveguide. So if you change the aperture position, then coupling changes because electric field slope changes, I said. It's true for rectangular waveguide and also or SIW? Well, why curved surface? That means, yeah, surface of the cylinder, it's a magnetic one. It's a good question. So we have to analyze actually the field distribution. So what we are doing, it is observation. We are not analyzing it. Okay, so on this surface, if you look at the field distribution, okay, let me go back. Let me share the slide first. Yeah, you can see slide now. So look at the electric field carefully. We have only E phi component. If we have E phi only, it is becoming tangential on the surface of the cylinder. So what will be the magnetic field direction? It's perpendicular. Now we recall what is PMC and what is PEC. For PEC, perfectly electrical contactor, tangential electric field is 0. For PMC, tangential magnetic field is 0. And if tangential magnetic field is 0, then we have tangential electric field only. Or magnetic field is perpendicular. Same thing here happens.
Sir?
Yes.
So TE01 means that the electric field is in radial direction, right?
No, it is not like rectangular waveguide. You have to compare with the circular waveguide. It is not in radial direction, it is in phi direction. Phi angle.
Sir, you said that we represent TE NML, right? So N represents the circumferential. So N here would be 0, right?
That is the mode number, and you are saying about electric field direction. That is mode number. Why you are confusing these two things? So that NML, that represents number of maxima or minima. So along N we don't have any variation. You check here. In phi direction, do we have any variation? No variation. N equal to 0. We are talking about direction of electric field, not the mode number, right? Not the variation. Yes. Okay. Any other confusion? You can ask me. Otherwise, I'm going to start next chapter. Well, so next is network analysis. So today, just I will introduce this topic. Well, you see, here I'm showing a block diagram of a super heterodyne receiver. You learned it in analog communication. Now, okay, so sometimes we do mistake that two mixers means super heterodyne. No, super heterodyne means IF is fixed, intermediate frequency is fixed. That is the characteristics of super heterodyne. It can be one mixer, two mixers, more than two mixers, but IF is fixed. Okay, so if IF is fixed, actually, then we can design very high performance amplifier, then filter, and if IF is tunable, then it should be tunable, and then we can't. So this is the main advantage of super heterodyne. Well, now for the RF part, it starts from antenna. We have a bandpass filter, then a low noise amplifier. So we did not discuss about noise as such. So for now, just consider the name. As the name suggests, obviously, does not generate as such noise. Low noise amplifier. Then one more bandpass filter, it is optional, and then the mixer. So in mixer, what we do, we multiply two time domain signal. One, let's say, cos omega 1t, another one cos omega 2t. And then mixer will generate omega 1 plus omega 2 component and omega 1 minus omega 2 component, and they are harmonics. Well, we'll discuss later. So it uses the non-linearity of any device. It can be diode, transistor, non-linearity to generate these harmonics. Anyway, so local oscillator is connected to it. So this kill mixer, we call it RF front end, because after mixer we don't bother. RF engineer's job is done, because after mixer it's megahertz signals brought down. Now sometimes if you want to convert 2.4 to your voice signal, let's say a few kilohertz, we don't do it in one step. From the first mixer, first we brought it down to megahertz, then megahertz to kilohertz using the second mixer. Anyway, so we will then concentrate only on the RF part, antenna to mixer. Now, when we go for microwave system development, then you see, we always don't need electric field, magnetic field distribution inside the component. Then, if we need the terminal behaviors, that should be enough for most of the system designer. What that means? Here actually, this is the difference between a system engineer and a microwave engineer. As a microwave engineer, you have to design a bandpass filter, or you have to design a low noise amplifier. So for a bandpass filter, when you are designing it, yes, so how the electric field distribution is inside, magnetic field distribution is, how the coupling is occurring. You have to play with this different coupling, resonators, and other things. So you need microwave concept. Otherwise, you can't do it at RF frequency. Well, but when the bandpass filter is designed already, then we can represent it by a black box as if, and as a two-port device, you keep the characteristics of this, let's say S parameters. So when we buy any component from market, it can be amplifier, filter, mixer, it's available. You can do Google search. Well, even I saw in Amazon also they are selling some electronics product. Anyway, so they will mention this terminal properties. So if you buy a filter, they won't obviously show their circuit what they used inside, because that is related to IP, trade secret. They will just mention this terminal behavior, how the S parameters is varying, frequency versus S parameter plot. Same thing is true for amplifier. So for amplifier, other than S parameters, there are some additional parameters like noise figure and so on that we'll discuss later. IP3, IP1. Well, so they will discuss this terminal behavior. So then for a system engineer, this terminal behavior is enough. So in conclusion, then we can say that, of course, to find the device characteristics, we have to use Maxwell's equations. But so for what purpose? From Maxwell's equation, we have the electric field and magnetic field distributions. But not that always we need that. If you work as a system engineer, so this electric field, magnetic field distribution has nothing to do with you. You will be interested in the terminal behavior. So you have to understand this difference. So sometimes this Maxwell's equation or whatever this electric or magnetic field distribution, it generates too much information, not required for our practical purpose. So only terminal solution is enough. So once we have this terminal solution, then we can use similar concepts like circuit theory, which you learned in last year, network theory as a whole. but obviously with some modification. So in this chapter, we are going to discuss about that. We'll consider that the terminal behavior is available, and then how to utilize that to design a microwave system. Many components, okay, in series cascade connection. So how we do that? Well, I don't think we have enough time. Well, so till this point, if you have any question, you can ask me. When you define impedance, it is at the terminal. So impedance, it is also a terminal solution. Any question? You can switch on your microphone. In fact, for any general question also not related to this particular topic, if you are interested on microwave systems or other thing, any question if you have in mind, you can ask me. No question?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, can you please explain that why do we need multiple mixer stages in that superhead to time receiver diagram?
Multiple, sorry, it's not very clear. Once again.
Sir, in the superhead to time receiver diagram, there are multiple mixer stages. So why we need that?
Oh, okay. So let's say you are designing a Wi-Fi network. It's 2.4 gigahertz. Now you want to transfer voice data. So that will be in kilohertz. So directly we can't go from gigahertz to kilohertz. Okay, because of the tolerance and other things that we'll discuss maybe in November, I think. So if let's say it changes by 1%, then it changes in megahertz. So that's why we don't do in one step. From gigahertz to megahertz first, then from megahertz to kilohertz in 2 steps. Well, so analog VLSI engineer, they will take care. So our job is to generate just the megahertz signal as RF engineer till that point. So you don't have any question? What type of jobs are available in this domain? What if people do actually after reading microwave engineering?
What is the syllabus for Saturday's test?
Syllabus for?
Saturday test, like upcoming
Oh,
test.
Saturday's test. Oh, you are more interested on test syllabus. Okay. We discussed several times. It is guiding structure, including transmission line. I did not keep resonator. So we have set 1 and set 2. First, you have to answer set 1, submit it, then start set 2. Well, so altogether it will be done in 1.5 hours. In set 2, numerical question. Yeah, for website also we have to define, otherwise how we can use them in system. So that we'll discuss. So we have to, that's why treat it as a special scenario for waveguide, and we have to do something with the waveguide, otherwise we can't use it as a system element, right? Any other question? Well, thank you all for attending this session.